Okay, so today we're gonna like really dive into social media.
Yeah.
It's something obviously like we all use every day.
Yeah.
And we have like this huge analysis of it,
Right.
which like really tries to lay out like all the different ways it's impacting our lives.
Yeah.
So it's affecting how we communicate, how we learn,
Yeah.
how businesses work, how it affects our mental health, politics, privacy, like you name it.
It's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
You can't really escape it.
It's kind of inescapable at this point.
Yeah.
So the goal today is not to like rehash all but I think most people listening probably already have a pretty good grasp of like the basics of how these different platforms work.
I would say so.
But we're going to try to extract like the most important insights from this analysis.
Yeah, like the core stuff.
To give you like a more structured and nuanced understanding.
Exactly.
So this analysis, it's pretty comprehensive.
It is.
We've really dug deep into it. So we're going to try to pull out like the most important findings.
Absolutely.
Give you a balanced perspective on the good and the bad.
Yeah, there's a lot of both.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So why don't we just jump right in?
Sure.
And I think maybe one of the most fundamental things to look at is how social media affects our communication and our relationships.
Yeah, for sure. Because, I mean, that's like the core of it, right?
Yeah, like that's kind of what it was built for.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this analysis points to some really interesting dynamics.
It does. It's kind of a paradox in some ways.
Yeah.
Because it gives us all this amazing connectivity.
Right.
But it also kind of presents challenges to like the depth and quality of our interactions.
Yeah, like are we really connecting?
Exactly.
Or are we just like...
Or is it just surface level?
On the surface.
Yeah.
So on the positive side, like obviously one of the biggest things is just this instant messaging.
Oh, yeah.
Like the fact that you can just open up WhatsApp or Messenger or Instagram.
Or any of those.
And send a text, a photo, a video. Like that's
it's instantaneous.
Huge.
It really changes things.
It's hard to remember what it was like before.
Yeah. No, right? Like,
what do we even do?
That, I don't even know.
So, and the analysis like really emphasizes that global connectivity.
Yeah.
Like being able to interact with different cultures and viewpoints and everything.
Yeah, and it mentions specifically like Facebook, even with all of its issues.
Right.
It has really helped people reconnect with old friends, classmates, distant relatives.
I mean, how many people have like found their long lost whatever
on Facebook? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
But of course the analysis also talks about the downsides.
Yeah, for sure.
And one that really struck me was this idea of like the inherent superficiality of online interaction.
It's just not the same.
Like it's just not the same as like a face-to-face conversation.
Yeah, you miss all those nonverbal cues.
Yeah, all the body language, the tone of voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that can lead to so many misunderstandings.
Oh, totally.
Because you read a text and you're like, wait.
Right, what do they mean by that?
Yeah, what is the tone here?
Yeah.
So much room for miscommunication.
And then, of course, there's like the addictive nature of it.
Oh, yeah.
The analysis talks about how these platforms are designed to keep you scrolling.
They are. They're very good at it.
And it's so easy to just get sucked in.
Yeah. And then you neglect, your real life relationships.
Right.
You're not spending time with the people right there in front of you.
So I think this is a good point to like kind of throw a question out to our listeners.
Yeah.
Based on everything we've just talked about and your own experiences,
right.
Do you think social media ultimately brings people closer together?
Yeah.
Or does it create distance in our relationships?
It's a good question.
Yeah, it's something to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so moving on from communication.
Okay.
Let's talk about education and learning.
Yeah, how we learn.
Because this is another area where social media has had a huge impact.
A huge impact.
And the analysis points to both opportunities and challenges here.
Yeah, both sides of the coin.
So on the positive side, you can't deny that there's been this explosion of online learning platforms.
It's incredible.
YouTube, Coursera, LinkedIn Learning.
All of those.
Like the amount of information that is available to anyone with an internet connection is mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's really democratized education in a way.
Yeah, it's incredible.
That's amazing.
And the analysis also talks about the collaborative aspects.
Right.
Like Facebook groups, Google Classroom.
Yeah.
Like these are tools that allow students and teachers to share resources, to discuss ideas, like in ways that just weren't possible before.
It's great for like peer-to-peer learning.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you can get help from other students. You can ask questions.
It's like a global classroom in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
And then for language learning,
Oh, yeah.
like the analysis specifically mentions tools like Duolingo and language exchange groups on Reddit.
It's so much easier now to like practice with native speakers.
Yeah, to actually like have conversations with people from all over the world.
And that's like essential for like really mastering a new language.
Especially English.
Oh, yeah. Especially with English.
Yeah.
So many people learning English.
But of course,
Yeah,
there are also challenges.
there are.
And I think one of the biggest ones that the analysis talks about is just distraction.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's so easy to get distracted
It
because
is.
when you're trying to learn.
Like you're trying to study and then,
Right, you have all these notifications popping up.
yeah, you got the pings and the buzzes and the,
Yeah.
and then you're like, oh, what's this video?
Right, and then you fall down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you've
So-
wasted an hour.
yeah, you're like, wait, what was I doing?
Yeah, exactly.
So easy to get sucked in.
And the analysis also talks about misinformation,
Right.
which is a huge problem.
It is a big one.
Because it can be really hard to sift through all the information online
Yeah.
and figure out what's true and what's not.
And things spread so quickly.
Right.
Like it's hard to keep up.
So again, like thinking about our listeners,
Yeah.
based on your own experiences,
Uh-huh.
how has social media helped or hindered your learning journey?
That's a good question.
It's something to consider.
For sure.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the business world,
Okay.
because social media has completely transformed how businesses operate,
Oh, yeah.
especially in terms of marketing,
Absolutely.
like platforms like Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn.
All of them.
They offer such powerful tools for businesses to reach their target audience.
Right. They're so good at that targeted advertising.
Yeah, and the analysis really emphasizes this direct line of communication.
Right. You can talk directly to your customer.
Yeah, like through comments, direct messages,
Here.
you can really build a community and get feedback in real time.
Which is so valuable.
Yeah. You can see what people are saying about your product,
Yeah.
what they like, what they don't like.
You know, are they responding to your ads?
Exactly.
And then, of course, there's the growth of e-commerce, like Facebook Marketplace, Instagram shopping. Like people are buying and selling
Right on the platform.
directly through these platforms.
It's amazing.
It's crazy.
It is.
But of course, there are downsides.
There always are.
And the analysis talks about like the prevalence of fake reviews,
Yeah.
which can be a real problem
it can.
because it makes it really hard for consumers to know
Right.
like
Yeah.
what to trust.
What to believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's also just the intense competition
Right.
on these platforms.
Especially for small businesses.
Yeah.
It's hard to stand out.
Like if you're a small business
Yeah.
with limited resources,
Yeah. How do you compete with the big guys?
it's tough.
Yeah.
It is. So again, thinking about our listeners.
Yeah. Would you buy a product based solely on social media ads?
Yeah. Would you trust those ads enough?
Like why or why not?
Good question.
Yeah.
That's something to think about.
Oh.
So
Let's move on to,
I think one of the most important areas that this analysis covers
it's a big one.
is the impact of social media on mental health.
Yeah. Mental health and well-being.
Yeah. And this is something that gets a lot of attention these days
For good reason.
for good reason.
That's so important.
And the analysis presents like a really complex picture.
It does. There's a lot going on there.
So on the positive side,
Yeah.
The analysis talks about how social media can foster supportive communities,
Right.
like for people who are struggling with their mental health.
Yeah. Or pursuing like fitness goals or hobbies.
Yeah.
Like you can find your people online.
Right.
People who share your interests.
People who get it.
Yeah.
And that can be really powerful.
It can be.
And the analysis also talks about the role of awareness campaigns.
Like the mental health awareness movement.
Right, using hashtags and stuff
Yeah.
to spread awareness.
Yeah. And that's helped to reduce stigma
Yeah.
and encourage more open conversations,
Yeah. People are more comfortable talking about it now.
which is huge.
It is.
But of course, the analysis also points to some serious negative effects.
Yeah. There are some downsides.
And I think one of the biggest ones is this idea of social comparison.
Right.
Like you're constantly bombarded with these curated,
Yeah.
idealized images of other people's lives.
Yeah. And it's so easy to compare yourself to that.
And that can really fuel
Yeah.
feelings of anxiety and depression.
Yeah. You start to feel inadequate.
Yeah, like you're not good enough.
You're not doing enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's cyberbullying,
Right.
which is just a horrible
It's a huge problem.
And the anonymity of the internet
Yeah.
makes it even worse.
Yeah. People can hide behind their screens.
Yeah. And say things that they would never say to someone's face.
And the reach is so much wider.
Yeah.
Like it can go viral.
It's scary.
It is.
And then the analysis also talks about sleep disorders.
Right.
Like all that late night scrolling.
Yeah, you're on your phone in bed
Yeah.
and it messes up your sleep.
And then you're tired the next day.
Yeah, and then you're not functioning at your best.
It's a vicious cycle.
It is.
So, again, thinking about our listeners,
Yeah.
how do you balance your social media use with protecting your mental health?
How do you stay healthy?
Yeah, what are your strategies?
That's a good question.
So let's zoom out a little bit and look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And talk about the role of social media in politics and society.
Yeah, it's become so influential.
So influential.
Yeah.
And the analysis talks about how it's become this powerful tool for raising awareness and mobilizing activism.
Like movements like Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
They've really gained momentum because of social media.
Yeah, it's given them a global platform.
Yeah, exactly.
And the analysis also points to government transparency.
Right.
Like leaders using platforms like Twitter or X now to communicate policies and engage with the public.
Which can be good.
Yeah.
But it also has its downsides.
Yeah, like everything else.
Right.
But the analysis also highlights like the dangers of fake news
Oh, yeah.
and misinformation. It spreads so quickly online.
It does.
And it can have a real impact on elections.
Yeah, and public opinion in general.
Yeah.
Like it can really sway people,
Yeah.
especially if they're not careful.
It's scary.
It is.
And the analysis also talks about polarization.
Right.
Like these echo chambers and filter bubbles.
Where you only see information that confirms your existing beliefs.
Yeah, and it makes it really hard to have constructive dialogue.
Yeah, with people who disagree with you.
Yeah, and that's a big problem for society.
It is. It's dividing us.
So here's another question for our listeners. Based on everything we've just talked about,
Yeah.
do you think governments should regulate political content on social media?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a complex issue
It is.
with no easy answers.
Yeah. There's a lot to consider. Let's talk about privacy.
Yes, privacy and security.
Yeah.
Because this is another big area that the analysis covers.
Yeah, this is something that people are increasingly concerned about.
And for good reason.
A good reason.
The analysis outlines a number of risks,
Right.
like data theft.
Yeah. Hackers stealing personal information.
Yeah, and then using that information for fraud.
Yeah. Identity theft, all sorts of things.
Yeah, it's scary.
It is.
And then there's the whole issue of like companies tracking our data
Right.
and using it for targeted advertising.
Yeah.
Like, is that,
Okay. It's a good question.
but where do we draw the line?
Yeah. How much privacy are we willing to give up
Yeah.
in exchange for these free services?
And then there's identity theft.
Right.
People creating fake profiles.
Yeah. To impersonate others.
Yeah. Which can be used for all sorts of malicious purposes.
They can.
So it's important to be aware of these risks.
Yeah, for sure.
And the analysis does offer some advice on how to protect ourselves.
It does.
Like using strong passwords.
Yeah, don't use the same password for everything.
Yeah, and don't use like password 123.
Oh yeah, that's a bad one.
Being cautious about the information we share online
Right?
and adjusting our privacy settings.
Yeah, take some time to go through those settings.
Yeah, most people just like click accept
They don't even read.
without even reading them.
Yeah.
So again, thinking about our listeners,
Yeah.
how concerned are you about your privacy on social media?
That's a good question.
Yeah, like on a scale of 1 to 10,
Yeah, where do you fall?
where do you fall?
Something to think about.
So,
Let's end by looking ahead
okay,
to the future.
the future of social media.
Yeah, what's coming next?
And the analysis talks about some really fascinating trends.
It does. It's pretty mind-blowing.
So one of the big ones is VR.
Right, virtual reality.
Virtual reality social networks.
Like Meta's Horizon Worlds.
Yeah.
That's one example.
Like
It's
imagine.
like a whole new level of immersion.
Yeah, like instead of just looking at a screen,
Yeah, you're actually in the environment.
you're in it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Crazy.
And then AI,
Oh, yeah.
artificial intelligence.
AI is going to play a huge role.
It already is.
Yeah.
Like think about chatbots
Uh-huh.
and automated content moderation.
Yeah.
Like that's just going to keep evolving.
It's going to get more sophisticated.
Yeah, more integrated into our lives.
And then the analysis also talks about decentralized platforms which are really interesting because they're built on blockchain technology, which could potentially give users more control over their data.
Yeah, and more privacy.
Yeah.
Which is something that people are really craving.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that develops.
So for our listeners, thinking about all these possibilities.
What changes would you like to see in the future of social media?
What would make it better?
Yeah. What are your hopes and dreams?
Yeah. What's your ideal social media platform?
So I think it's safe to say that social media's impact is huge.
Huge.
It's complex.
It is.
It's multifaceted.
Yeah.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, we could talk about this for hours.
We could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
But hopefully this deep dive has given you some food for thought.
Yes, some things to ponder.
And, you know, we've explored its influence on how we communicate, how we learn, how businesses operate, our mental health, politics, privacy.
Like all the big stuff.
Like it really touches every aspect of our lives.
It does.
So the analysis ends with this really thought-provoking question.
Okay.
Which I think is a good one to leave our listeners with.
Yeah.
Considering everything we've discussed, do you believe that the benefits of social media
ultimately outweigh the drawbacks?
That's the big question.
This is the big question.
Yeah.
There's no easy answer,
No.
but it's something that we all need to grapple with.
For sure.
So on that note,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
You know, we've talked about all these emerging trends.
Right. VR, AI, decentralization.
Yeah, like these technologies are evolving so rapidly.
They are.
So how do you think our relationship with social media is going to change in the coming years?
Yeah. How will it evolve?
And what are some of the long-term societal implications?
Yeah. The things we haven't even thought of yet.
Yeah, the unintended consequences.
Right.
It's definitely something to keep thinking about.
For sure.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time.
See you then.
All right. Welcome in, everyone, to another deep dive. You know, we've been talking a lot about self-doubt when learning English, something I know a lot of us can relate to.
Definitely. It's a really common feeling.
So we wanted to dig deeper into this for you guys, not just about like understanding why it happens, but actually figuring out what we can do about it. Some really solid steps you can take to start building more confidence in your English.
Exactly. So we're not just going to sit here and offer sympathy. What we want to do is give you some tools, some real strategies. So we'll be looking at the psychology behind it, some of the unique challenges that English learners face, and probably most important part, how you can actually change the way you think about this whole thing. We want to show you a way forward, not just like cope with the self-doubt, but really break out of it.
So let's get into this feeling itself, that self-doubt. It's that kind of uncertainty, that feeling you get when you're like, am I really good enough at English? And the research that you shared with me really pointed to this coming from both, kind of like inside us and from outside us. What can you tell us about that?
It's actually really fascinating when you look internally, inside yourself. There's this contrast that I think a lot of learners experience. In your native language, you can express all sorts of complex thoughts. You have all these nuances, right? But when it comes to English, maybe the vocabulary just isn't there yet, or you just haven't quite figured out how to structure those sentences to really capture what you want to say.
Yeah.
And that gap can be super frustrating. You have this picture in your mind, this amazing idea, and then when you try to put it into English, it comes out kind of like blurry. It's like you only have a few crayons to work with instead of this whole, box of colored pencils.
Right.
So the big takeaway here is to focus on the message, the core of what you want to say, even if the English isn't totally perfect.
That's a great way to put it. Like not having all the right colors, but still getting the message across.
Exactly. And then, shifting to those external factors, I think comparison plays a huge role.
Yeah.
You're constantly seeing native English speakers who just seem to flow effortlessly. Or other learners who are further along than you.
Right.
And it's natural to compare yourself, and feel like you're not measuring up.
Totally.
Then there's that fear of making mistakes, of being judged.
Absolutely.
Like especially when you're speaking in a group or trying to talk to a native speaker.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's so important to remember that learning a language is like putting yourself out there. It's not just grammar rules. It's getting emotional, getting social.
It is. It's definitely vulnerable.
Yeah.
And, one thing that came up a lot in the research you sent was the pressure that comes with English being such a global language.
Right.
I mean, it's everywhere, right? For work, school, travel. And so there's this expectation to reach a certain level, which can make you feel like you're not good enough if you're not progressing as fast as you want or if you keep making mistakes.
Totally.
But one thing that really stood out to me in the research was that self-doubt isn't like this permanent part of you. You know, it doesn't mean you can't do it.
Right.
They actually talk about it as a habit.
Okay.
Like something that your mind has learned to do over time, which
Yeah.
actually means you can unlearn it, you know, and start thinking in ways that actually help you.
Yeah. So that means there's hope, which is really encouraging to hear.
It is. It is. And I think any kind of positive action, any step you take in the right direction can start to disrupt that habit.
That makes sense. So, all right, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of self-doubt. What are some of the specific things that make learning English so hard? What makes this different from learning, say, a new skill or a new app or something like that?
Yeah. You know, English is a beautiful language, but it definitely has its quirks. And those quirks can be a huge source of frustration.
Yeah.
Like, for example, those irregular verbs. I mean, why are they so irregular? They just don't seem to follow any logic.
Right.
And phrasal verbs, oh man, those are another one.
Yeah, pick up, give in, all those.
Exactly. It's like taking a simple verb and then adding a preposition to it, and suddenly it means something totally different. So for those, what can really help is to focus on the main verb first, right? And then think about what direction the preposition is pointing you in. So with pick up, you're taking something and bringing it up, right?
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
And give in, you're surrendering, right?
Makes sense. Makes sense.
So breaking it down like that can help you grasp the general meaning, even if it feels kind of nonsensical at first.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have the wonderful world of English pronunciation. I'm sure you've come across words like through, though, and tough.
Absolutely.
They look pretty much the same, but they sound so different.
Totally different, yeah.
That inconsistency can be really confusing and demoralizing for learners.
For sure, for sure.
It makes you feel like you're constantly guessing.
Yeah.
One strategy that can help with this is looking into minimal pairs.
Minimal pairs, okay.
So those are words that differ by just one sound. Like, for example, ship and sheep, you know? Focusing on those subtle differences can really improve your pronunciation over time.
Yeah, and that can make a huge difference in being understood.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But beyond just the language itself, I think there's this cultural aspect too.
Right, you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, we're bombarded with English media, you know, movies, TV, music, everything.
Yeah.
And English is often associated with success and, like, you know, being sophisticated.
It's a powerful language.
It is, and it can lead to learners feeling like they have to achieve this, you know, perfect native-like accent to be successful.
That's like you're chasing this impossible standard.
Exactly, and that can be a recipe for self-doubt.
Okay, so we've got the language itself, the cultural pressure, and then on top of that, there are the practical challenges that learners face every day.
Yeah, you know, it's one thing to understand the rules, but it's another to actually use the language confidently in real life.
Right.
And the sources you shared really highlighted some key practical challenges.
What were some of those?
So lack of opportunities to practice. If you're not living in an English-speaking country, it can be really hard to find people to talk to.
Yeah, for sure.
And even if you can find people, then there's the fear of making mistakes in front of them, that fear of looking foolish or sounding stupid, which can be really paralyzing.
Absolutely.
And then some learners, and I think this is like, you know, a personality thing, they strive for perfection from the get-go.
Yeah.
Which is unrealistic and can be super demotivating. And then, of course, we're constantly exposed to fluent English speakers on TV and online. It's hard not to compare yourself and feel like you're not good enough.
Right. It can be really discouraging.
It can. And what happens is you start avoiding practice because you're scared of making mistakes. And then, of course, because you're not practicing, you're not improving as much, which fuels that self-doubt even more. It becomes this vicious cycle.
A downward spiral.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's so important to take those steps to change your mindset and to start taking action, you know, to break out of that loop.
Okay, let's talk about some of those actionable steps. So the first one that really jumped out at me was reframing mistakes.
Yeah.
This seems so crucial.
It is. It's really about shifting your perspective. Instead of seeing mistakes as failures, see them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Okay.
One of your sources had a great analogy. They talked about thinking of yourself as a scientist conducting experiments.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. Like if a scientist's experiment doesn't work out, they don't just give up. They analyze what happened. They gather data. They adjust their approach for next time.
They learn from it.
Exactly. And that's what we need to do with English. Every time you make a mistake, it's giving you valuable information about the language.
So instead of feeling embarrassed when someone corrects you, you're actually gathering data.
Exactly. There's this great example in one of the sources about someone ordering a coffee hot, and the waiter goes, "A hot coffee."
Right.
And instead of being embarrassed, that person now understands that adjectives usually come before nouns in English, so it becomes this learning experience instead of a moment of shame.
It's a total reframing of that interaction.
It is. It really tucks away the sting.
Yeah.
And the more you do that, the less power those mistakes have to make you feel bad.
Okay, that makes sense. So step number 2 is setting realistic goals and celebrating those small wins.
Yes. Love this one. This is all about like building positive momentum. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by this huge goal of speaking English fluently, which can seem impossible, you break it down into smaller, more manageable steps.
Yeah. It's like you're climbing a mountain, right?
Exactly.
You got to focus on each step.
Exactly.
You can't just keep looking at the top. It's too daunting.
Exactly. The research actually pointed out that these vague goals, like, I want to speak English fluently, can actually make self-doubt worse, because there's no clear way to measure your progress.
It's like you're just wandering around with no map,
Yeah.
no destination.
Yeah, exactly.
So what would be a more realistic goal?
So instead, think about things like, okay, this week, I'm going to learn 10 new words and actually use them in conversations. Or I'm going to watch a short English video without subtitles and see how much I understand.
Okay.
Or even, I'm going to confidently greet someone in English.
Right. Those are achievable.
Exactly. And when you achieve them, you celebrate. Even if it's a small win, you acknowledge it. You tell yourself, good job, I did it.
Right.
And even a small reward, like, a little treat or something, can really reinforce that feeling of success. It tells your brain, hey, we're making progress here.
I love that. It's like giving yourself a little pat on the back.
Exactly. And one of the sources actually suggested picking one tiny English goal for the day, Maybe it's listening to this entire deep dive or just saying one sentence out loud and then taking a moment to appreciate that you did it.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
It's about building that sense of accomplishment step by step.
Okay, step number 3.
Yeah.
And this is a big one for a lot of learners. Practicing speaking, even when you're scared.
Yes, the dreaded speaking practice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's completely understandable.
It is.
You're worried about your accent, you're worried about grammar mistakes, you're worried about just blanking out and not finding the right words.
Right.
But the research was very clear on this. The best way to overcome that fear is to just do it.
Practice, practice, practice.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be this big, scary thing, You can start small in low-pressure situations. Like one of the other suggestions was talking to yourself in English.
Talking to yourself.
Yeah, like just describe what you're doing throughout the day.
That's interesting.
It's a safe space to practice, right? No one's judging you.
Right.
And you get used to hearing yourself speak English. Another idea was recording yourself.
Okay.
Now, I know that can feel awkward,
Yeah.
but when you listen back, you can actually learn a lot.
About how you sound. Yeah.
Yeah. And the research highlighted, make sure to focus on what you did well, not just on the mistakes. And then, of course, there are language exchange partners.
Okay, yeah, like finding someone to practice with.
Exactly. And there are apps like Tandem or HelloTalk that can connect you with native speakers who are learning your language.
Oh, that's cool.
So you both get to practice. And it's a very supportive environment, right? You're both learners, you're both making mistakes.
So it's less intimidating than trying to talk to like a native speaker who's, already fluent.
Exactly. And, one thing that the research really emphasized, especially in the beginning, don't worry about perfection. Native speakers appreciate the effort you're making.
Right. They don't expect you to sound perfect.
Exactly. They're usually very understanding.
All right. Step number 4 is surrounding yourself with positive input.
Yeah. This is about creating a positive environment for yourself. In a world where we're constantly bombarded with information, you need to be mindful about what you're exposing yourself to.
Makes sense.
So instead of watching, super advanced English content and comparing yourself to those speakers, find content that's more accessible for your level.
Okay, like what kind of stuff?
Things like children's TV shows, they use simpler language,
Right.
slower speech.
Clear pronunciation, yeah.
Exactly.
Or even like sitcoms with subtitles.
Sitcoms are great, yeah, especially the ones that are really popular because you can find them translated in so many languages. So if you get lost, you can always go back and check what they said in your native language.
Right. That's a great tip.
And then social media can actually be really helpful here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Follow English learners who are inspiring, who are sharing their journeys, their struggles, their successes. It creates this sense of community.
You realize you're not alone.
Exactly. You're all in this together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And another thing that came up a lot in the research was positive affirmations.
Okay, those are those like positive statements you say to yourself.
Exactly. Things like, I'm getting better at English every day, or my effort is more important than my mistakes.
Yeah.
And it sounds kind of cheesy, but actually saying them out loud can really help.
Really?
Yeah, because you're actively changing that internal dialogue from negative to positive.
It's like you're training your mind to focus on the good stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, step number 5 is mastering imperfect communication. I really love this one because it takes so much pressure off.
Yeah, it's about letting go of that need to be perfect before you even open your mouth.
Right.
So many learners get stuck in this mindset of like, I need to be fluent before I can actually use English.
Right.
But the research emphasized that the goal of language is to connect with other people, not to be grammatically flawless.
Yeah.
Native English speakers understand that.
They get it.
They're not expecting perfection. And they can usually understand what you mean, even if you make some mistakes.
Right. So it's about focusing on getting your message across, not on saying it perfectly.
Exactly. And one really cool strategy that came up was to use simpler words and even gestures if you get stuck. Like instead of trying to remember the word umbrella, you could say thing for rain and point upwards.
Yeah, that totally works.
It does. And every time you communicate successfully, even if it's imperfect, it builds your confidence. You realize you don't have to be perfect to connect with people.
So freeing.
It is. It really takes the pressure off.
Okay, step number 6 is tracking your progress.
Yes, this is a really good one for combating those feelings of like being stuck, you know?
Like you're not moving forward.
Yeah. Because self-doubt can make you forget how far you've actually come.
Right. You only focus on what you haven't achieved yet.
Exactly. So keeping a record of your learning journey can really help.
What kind of things should learners be tracking?
Some ideas that came up were like keeping a list of new words you learn each week.
Okay.
Maybe record yourself speaking once a month and then listen back later to hear how you've improved.
Oh, I like that. You can actually hear the progress.
You can. It's really motivating.
That's cool.
And, you know, even just writing down moments when you had a new understanding, like maybe you finally understood a joke in English or you followed a conversation that you wouldn't have been able to before.
It's like keeping a journal of those little victories.
It is. And those little victories add up, you know?
Yeah.
And seeing them written down can really boost your confidence.
One of the examples that really stood out to me was going from struggling to order food to being able to say, "Can I have a burger, please?" with confidence.
Exactly. It's something we take for granted once we can do it,
Right.
but it's a huge step.
Huge step, yeah. Okay, step number 7 is about tackling that negative self-talk and replacing it with more positive habits.
Yes, because we all have that inner critic, right? But for learners dealing with self-doubt, that critic can be especially harsh.
Yeah, it's that voice telling you you're not good enough or you'll never sound natural.
Yeah, or even, why bother? I should just give up.
Right, but those are just thoughts, right? They're not necessarily true.
Exactly. And the research emphasized that those negative thoughts are actually habits, you know? They're like well-worn paths in your brain.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
So to change those thoughts, you have to actively create new paths, more positive ones.
Okay, so how do we do that?
So the research gave some great examples of flipping those negative thoughts.
Like turning them around.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of thinking, I'm so bad at this, you consciously think, I'm learning, and that's what matters. Instead of, I'll never sound natural, you think, my accent is part of who I am, and I'm improving my communication every day.
Yeah.
And when you catch yourself thinking, why am I even trying? You can counter that with, I'm trying because I want to grow. I want to connect with people.
Right. And saying those positive thoughts out loud can really make a difference, right?
It does. It makes them more real.
Yeah.
And when you combine that with actually practicing your English, it creates this positive feedback loop.
Right. You're taking action and you're encouraging yourself at the same time.
Exactly.
Okay. And finally, step number 8 is embracing your identity as an English learner.
Yeah. This is about acceptance, you know?
Acceptance of where you are on the journey.
Exactly. It's about letting go of this idea that you have to become someone else to speak English well.
Right.
Your accent, your unique way of expressing yourself, those are all part of who you are. They're valuable.
Yeah.
and English belongs to everyone who speaks it.
Right. It's a global language.
It is. You mentioned some inspiring examples of successful non-native English speakers earlier.
Like Shakira, Jackie Chan, Penelope Cruz, people like that.
Exactly. They haven't erased their accents. Their English is part of their identity.
Yeah, and people admire them for it.
They do.
Yeah.
And it's about shifting your perspective from I'm not good enough to I'm a proud learner. Every effort you make is something to be proud of.
It's a mindset shift from feeling inadequate to feeling empowered.
Exactly.
Okay, so beyond these mindset shifts, we also talked about some practical exercises that learners can do every day to build confidence. Can you remind us of some of those?
Yeah, these are all about taking action, doing something every day to strengthen that self-belief muscle.
Right.
So one was the mirror challenge. Just spend 1 minute every day talking to yourself in English.
Just looking in the mirror and talking.
Yep. It gets you comfortable with hearing your own voice in English.
Okay.
Another one was word of the day. You learn one new word each day and then try to use it in 5 different sentences, spoken or written.
That's a good one. It helps you actually remember the word.
It does. And then there's shadowing, which is where you listen to a short English audio or video and repeat phrases, trying to mimic the intonation and the rhythm.
Oh, yeah.
That's really good for pronunciation and fluency.
Okay. And then role playing. Act out common situations like ordering food or asking for directions.
That's a good way to practice for a real life situation.
It is.
Yeah.
And finally, keep a gratitude list. Every day, write down 3 things you're grateful for in your English learning journey.
That's a great idea.
It helps you focus on the positive.
Right. Focus on what you're achieving.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of positive steps. But the research also acknowledged that overcoming self-doubt isn't always a smooth, linear process.
Yeah.
There are going to be setbacks, times when that doubt creeps back in. What should learners do when that happens?
It's important to remember that setbacks are normal.
Right.
They're part of the process of breaking any habit. So when that happens, don't beat yourself up.
Right.
Instead, the research suggests asking yourself these questions.
Okay.
What went well in that situation, even if it was something small?
Okay.
What can I learn from this experience?
Okay.
And what's one small step I can take to move forward from here? So you're focusing on solutions, not on the problem.
Exactly. There was a good example in the research about someone who froze up during an English conversation.
Right.
But then they realized, hey, at least I started the conversation. That's a win in itself.
Yeah.
And maybe they learn that they need to work on a certain phrase or grammar point.
Right. So it becomes a learning opportunity.
Exactly. Setbacks are often just signs that you're pushing yourself,
You're stepping outside your comfort zone.
Exactly.
So as we start wrapping up here, I want to ask, what's the long-term reward for all this effort? What happens if you keep working on overcoming self-doubt and building confidence?
The research painted a really hopeful picture of what's possible. Imagine having conversations in English without constantly second-guessing yourself.
Yeah.
Understanding jokes, cultural references, those subtle things.
Right.
Feeling confident, writing emails, giving presentations.
Right. And enjoying English movies and music.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
And maybe even starting to think or dream in English. And while you might still have moments of self-doubt, they won't control you the way they used to.
That's amazing. It sounds like a completely different experience of using English.
It is. And the research really emphasized that this is achievable, by taking those small, consistent steps we talked about, reframing mistakes, setting realistic goals, practicing speaking, and believing in yourself.
So it's not just about learning English, it's about personal growth.
Exactly. It's about building resilience, courage, and a stronger sense of self.
So the big takeaway for everyone listening is self-doubt is a habit, and habits can be broken.
Yes, and confidence is something you can build.
And every time you speak, write, or listen in English, you're taking a step in that direction.
You are. It's a journey, not a quick fix. But the progress is definitely there if you stick with it.
So wherever you are right now, just take a moment to acknowledge yourself, Tell yourself, I'm an English learner and I'm enough.
Yes, you are.
And then commit to one small step today. Maybe it's reading a paragraph in English, saying a new word out loud, or just appreciating how far you've come. Because with those small actions and that belief in yourself, you really can overcome that self-doubt. And if you can learn to overcome self-doubt in one area of your life, like learning English, imagine what else you could achieve. What other limitations can you break free from? It's all about challenging those negative thoughts and stepping into your full potential.
Beautifully said.
Ever wish you could just skip the small talk
Yeah.
and know what someone was really thinking? Not like actual mind reading, but something almost as cool.
Yeah,
Unlocking that secret code, figuring out body language.
I like that, like a superpower.
Yeah. And it's less about, I don't know, just intuition or something.
Right.
The sources you sent, they make it clear. It's way more about science than you'd think. There are actual cues, things you can learn to recognize.
It's about decoding those silent signals, right? The ones we're all sending out without even realizing it half the time.
Exactly. And that's our mission today, to, I guess, give you the tools, to become a body language decoder yourself. We're going to cover a ton: faces, personal space, you name it. Like, did you know there's a thing called micro expressions? It's crazy the stuff you can pick up on if you know what you're looking for. Imagine, like, in a meeting or out with friends.
Yeah, even just watching the news.
Oh, totally. You start seeing things in a whole new light, like what's really going on.
It adds a whole other dimension to your understanding, for sure.
Okay, so then why even bother? Why is body language such a big deal?
Well, according to the research, a lot of what we communicate doesn't actually come from the words we say.
Really?
Yeah, depending on the situation, you're looking at something like 70 to even 93% that's nonverbal.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, does that hold up even if it's, just like straightforward information, no emotions or anything?
It's a good question. And the exact numbers, they can definitely shift around depending on the study and what kind of communication we're talking about. Like, yeah, if it's a super technical briefing or something, maybe words matter more.
Right.
But the big idea that nonverbal cues are crucial, especially when you've got emotions involved, that seems pretty solid. Like, think about it if you want to know if someone's being sincere.
You're going to watch their face, listen to their tone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's this anthropologist, Ray Birdwhistle. He did a lot of work on kinesics.
That's the study of
body movement, gestures, all that. And he basically argued that those signals often carry more weight than the actual spoken language.
Whoa, so it's like we're having two conversations at once, one with words, and then this whole other one going on silently.
Pretty much. And even though Albert Mehrabian's that 738-55 rule,
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
it's really specific to how we understand feelings, attitudes, but it does illustrate the point, how we say something, the body language that goes with it, that often overpowers the words themselves, especially when it comes to emotions, yeah.
So the takeaway is, even if the exact percentages change, what we don't say is still saying a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, zooming out a bit, evolutionarily speaking, how do we even get to this point where we're communicating without words?
Well, think about it. Way before we had language as we know it, body language was crucial for survival. For our ancestors, it was how they spotted danger, showed dominance, formed bonds, all that.
Like, you see someone tense up, their face changes, you know something's wrong.
Instantaneously, yeah. It's like a primal response built right in.
Fascinating. So it's universal then, this body language.
Yeah. To a point, yes. There are some expressions, emotions that seem to be hardwired cross-culturally, but culture definitely plays a role too in how things are expressed and understood. That's something we'll definitely get into more later.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's dive into the nitty-gritty. What are the main things we should be looking at when we're trying to, decipher someone's body language?
All right, so the first thing is, it's not about cherry picking, okay? Like, one gesture in isolation might not mean much. You need to look for patterns, clusters of cues that back each other up. So we can start with facial expressions.
Ah, yes. The good old window to the soul.
Right. There's a reason that phrase is so popular. There's this psychologist, Paul Ekman. He did this amazing research. Identified 7 universal emotions. They show up in facial expressions the same way, no matter where you go in the world.
Like?
Happiness, sadness, anger, surprise, fear, disgust, and contempt.
Interesting. So is it just about, is someone smiling or not? Or is there more to it?
It's definitely more nuanced than that. So take a genuine smile, for example. We call it a Duchenne smile. And what happens is, it's not just the corners of your mouth turning up.
Right.
It also involves the muscles around your eyes, those crow's feet wrinkles,
I see. So there's a difference between a real smile and a fake one.
Exactly. And they've actually done studies using fancy tech that can measure the muscle activity so you can tell the difference.
Wow, that's amazing. So what else should we be looking for, face-wise?
Well, a furrowed brow can mean a few things. Confusion, worry, anger even. Pursed lips can signal disapproval or tension, even just deep concentration sometimes. Tight jaw, that's often a sign of stress, holding back anger. And then there are micro expressions.
Those sound intense. What are they exactly?
They're these super fast expressions, like flashes, that happen for just a fraction of a second. They often reveal a hidden emotion before the person can control their face.
Whoa. So if you can spot them.
You're getting a glimpse of their true feelings. But it definitely takes practice.
Okay, moving down from the face, the eyes. They say the eyes are the most expressive part of the face.
Oh, for sure. Direct eye contact. That can be a sign of engagement, feeling confident, or sometimes even aggression, dominance, depending on the situation.
Right. And then if someone's avoiding eye contact, that usually means
Discomfort, maybe shyness, or possibly even that they're trying to deceive you, although you always got to factor in cultural norms there.
oh yeah, that's important.
What's really fascinating to me is how pupils react.
Pupils.
Yeah. So when something gets us excited or interested, good or bad excitement, our pupils actually get bigger. It's an automatic response tied to our emotions. And then rapid blinking. That can show nervousness or that someone's mind is racing. Steady gaze, on the other hand, that might mean they're really focused or even trying to intimidate you, depending.
So much information packed into just the eyes. Now, what about how we hold our whole body, posture?
Posture is a big one. Think about someone standing tall, shoulders relaxed, chest open.
They seem confident, approachable.
Right. That's an open posture. Now, flip that slumped shoulders, arms crossed tight across the chest.
Closed off.
Yeah, closed posture. Could be insecurity, maybe feeling defensive, not really engaged. Leaning in usually means interest. Leaning back, maybe they want some space, not so into it. And then there's mirroring.
Oh, I've heard of that.
That's when people subconsciously start copying each other's posture, movements. It's a sign of connection, building rapport.
I've definitely noticed that, like when you really click with someone.
Yeah, it happens naturally. Okay, so next, gestures, hands, arms. How do those play into this whole body language thing?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. Like, what about open palms?
Well, those are usually linked to honesty, sincerity, like, hey, I'm open, nothing to hide. Clenched fists, though, that's more tension, anger, ready to fight.
Makes sense. What about pointing?
Pointing can be used to emphasize, but it can also be seen as aggressive, even accusing, and then self-touching.
Like what?
Touching the face, neck, hair. It's often a way to self-soothe when we're anxious, uncomfortable. There's also a distinction between illustrators, those gestures that go along with our words, and adapters.
Adapters.
Those are the unconscious movements, like fidgeting, adjusting clothes. Those can signal underlying nervousness, maybe even that something's not quite right,
So, like, if someone's fidgeting a lot, that could be a red flag.
It could be.
Huh.
All right, last but not least, personal space. Like, how close someone stands to you.
Yeah, we all have that bubble.
Proxemics is the fancy term. And there are actually different zones of personal space, from intimate, like super close, to social, more for acquaintances. So if someone's standing closer than what feels comfortable for your relationship, it could mean they're trying to dominate or be aggressive, or even that they're attracted to you,
Interesting. And if they're way far away?
Could be discomfort, maybe they're just aloof or don't trust you. And of course, cultural norms play a huge role in all this.
Right. So it's like all these different levels of meaning just in how we position ourselves.
Exactly. Oh, and we can't forget about the way we speak, too. The tone, speed, volume, that's all part of body language, too, even though technically it's called paralanguage.
Right. Like a shaky voice.
Could mean fear, nervousness, loud, forceful tone, anger, trying to take charge. Slow, deliberate way of speaking might show thoughtfulness, but also could be a stall tactic if someone's lying, And changes in pitch, how our voice goes up and down, that can reveal a lot about our emotions, too.
It's amazing how many layers there are to communication.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to see it's not about taking one gesture and saying, this means that.
No, absolutely not. Context is everything.
Right. So like arms crossed, maybe they're just cold.
Exactly. You got to look at the whole situation, what's normal for that person, and are there other cues that match up?
It's not like a body language dictionary.
Nope. And then you've got cultural norms, too. What's polite in one place might be rude somewhere else. Like in some East Asian cultures, not making direct eye contact is a sign of respect. But in the West, it can come off as shifty,
Yeah, good point. So you have to know who you're dealing with culturally.
Very important. And it's super helpful to get a sense of someone's baseline behavior. Like, how do they usually sit? How much eye contact do they make? Once you know that, you can spot the changes, the things that might signal a shift in their mood, their intentions. And going back to what we said before, looking for clusters of cues, right? Several things that point in the same direction.
Okay.
It's way more reliable than just one gesture by itself.
Okay, so it's about patterns, context, and cultural background. Now let's talk about specific emotions. Like, what does happiness look like in terms of body language?
So happiness, the main thing, is going to be that genuine smile, the Duchenne smile with the eyes involved. Usually relaxed posture, open gestures, kind of an upbeat vibe overall. But if the smile seems forced or their eyes aren't in it, could be they're hiding something else.
Okay. What about sadness?
Sadness often shows up as slumped shoulders, mouth turned down, movements are slower, less eye contact, their gaze might be down, and sometimes the eyebrows kind of pull together in the middle.
What about when someone's angry?
Anger is usually pretty obvious. Tense jaw, narrowed eyes, that furrowed brow we talked about, maybe even a flushed face. Their posture might stiffen up, gestures are sharp, sudden pointing, fists clenched, and their voice often gets louder, harsher.
Fear. That seems like it would have some strong body language too.
Oh yeah. Wide eyes, eyebrows raised, mouth open, maybe even gasping for air. They might freeze up or try to back away. Rapid breathing, pale skin, those are all signs of fear.
And disgust. What does that look like?
Think about smelling something awful. That wrinkled nose, eyes squinted, upper lip raised, those are the classic disgust expressions. Might even turn their head away, like they're trying to get away from whatever's disgusting them.
And contempt. That's a little more subtle, right?
It is. Contempt is often shown by a kind of one-sided smirk, just one corner of the mouth lifting. Eyes might narrow a bit, and they might turn their head away slightly, like they think they're better than you.
Last one, surprise. That seems like a quick one.
Yeah, surprise is super short-lived. Eyebrows up, eyes wide, mouth open, but it usually only lasts a few seconds before it changes into something else, depending on what caused the surprise.
Okay, that's really helpful, breaking down each emotion like that. Now let's talk about lying. Can you really tell if someone's lying just by their body language?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, it's more complicated than a lot of people think. There's no one guaranteed tell, like Pinocchio's nose.
Right, so not everyone who avoids eye contact is lying.
Exactly. And just being fidgety doesn't mean someone's dishonest. Nervousness can come from all sorts of things.
So how can you tell? What should you look for?
The biggest clues usually involve a disconnect between what someone's saying and what their body's doing. Like maybe they say they're happy, but there's a flicker of sadness in their face, a micro-expression.
Gotcha. So it's about looking for those mismatches.
Yeah. Also, watch out for overcompensating. Like trying too hard to appear honest by staring you down or being super still. Hesitations in their speech, sudden changes in posture, a lot of self-touching those can all be signs that someone's uncomfortable with the truth. And do their gestures, their facial expressions match what they're saying? Like if they're describing something sad, but their tone is cheerful and they're relaxed, something might be off.
So again, it's about those inconsistencies more than any one specific gesture.
Exactly. And it's super important to remember that what's considered deceptive in one culture might be totally normal in another. So you always have to take that into account.
Right. Can't just assume everyone follows the same rules.
No.
So we've covered what to look for. What about actually getting better at this? Are there exercises people can do?
Totally. Like anything, practice makes perfect. One great tip, start paying attention to the people you see regularly. Get a sense of their baseline, like how do they usually stand, what are their typical gestures, all that. Then, if something changes, you'll notice.
Become a people watcher.
Basically, yeah, go to a park, a cafe, whatever, and just observe people. Try to figure out their emotions, their relationships based on their body language.
Interesting. What else?
Try mirroring someone subtly when you're talking to them.
Oh, like we talked about earlier.
Yep, helps build rapport, but also makes you more aware of those cues. And ask calibration questions.
Calibration quiz.
Questions where you already know the answer. That way, you can see how someone acts when they have no reason to lie. Gives you a benchmark for their truthful behavior. You can even record yourself during conversations. You might be surprised what you notice.
Like things you're doing that you didn't even realize.
Exactly. And lastly, try watching a show or movie with the sound off. Just focus on the body language, see if you can guess what's going on. Then turn the sound back on and see how well you did.
Cool. So now switching gears a bit, how does knowing all this actually help us in real life?
Well, in relationships, it can make you more empathetic. You'll start to pick up on unspoken needs, see when someone's upset, even if they don't say it.
That's huge.
At work, it can boost your communication skills. You'll be able to tell if your audience is engaged or if they're tuning you out.
And you said negotiations too.
Oh, yeah. It can be really helpful in negotiations. You can get a sense of someone's true position, see if they're bluffing. And just in general, you start to understand social dynamics better. Who's in charge, who's following, who's interested, who's not.
Makes sense. So basically, it makes you more emotionally intelligent. Now, what about the science behind all this? We touched on it briefly earlier, but what's actually happening in our brains when we process body language?
So there are these things called mirror neurons, right? And they fire not just when we do something, but when we see someone else doing it.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like our brain is creating a simulation so we can kind of feel what they're feeling. That's a big part how we understand nonverbal cues. And then there's the amygdala, that part of the brain that deals with emotions, super sensitive to body language. And it can process those signals even before we're consciously aware of them.
So that's where those gut feelings come from.
Could be, yeah. And research has even shown that different parts of the brain specialize in reading different aspects of body language. It's crazy complex.
Okay, so now that we're getting the hang of this, are there any common mistakes we should watch out for?
Oh, definitely. One big one is overanalyzing. Like, not every little movement means something major. Don't read too much into every twitch and fidget. And confirmation bias is another danger.
Confirmation bias.
It's when you look for evidence that supports what you already believe and you ignore the stuff that contradicts it. You got to stay objective when you're reading body language. And don't forget that words still matter. Body language gives you context, nuance, but it doesn't replace what people actually say.
Good point. So basically, don't jump to conclusions and don't ignore the verbal side of things.
Exactly. Now, if you want to take it to the next level, there are even more subtle cues you can start to pick up on.
Oh, like what?
Well, like which way someone's feet are pointed. That can often show you where they really want to go, even if their body's facing you. Breathing patterns, too shallow, fast breaths, probably anxious, slow, deep breaths, more relaxed. Look for changes in skin tone, like blushing. That can be embarrassment or anger. Even little things, like someone constantly adjusting their collar might mean they're uncomfortable, maybe not being totally truthful. And handshakes.
Oh yeah, those are important.
A firm handshake, that's usually confidence. Limp handshake, maybe insecurity. There's a whole world of meaning there too.
Okay, so putting it all together, could you give me an example, like a real life situation where all this comes into play?
Sure. Imagine you're in a meeting, right? And your colleague's presenting a new idea. They seem confident, good eye contact, all that. But they keep touching their neck, shifting their weight. Their smile doesn't quite reach their eyes, and their feet are pointed towards the door. And when you ask them a tough question, their voice gets higher. They start saying, and a lot.
I see.
Now, any one of those things on its own might not mean much. But taken together, it paints a different picture.
Yeah, like they're not as confident as they're trying to appear.
Right. They're nervous, maybe not sure about their own idea, and probably just want to get out of there. So by looking at the whole package, you get a much better understanding of what's really going on.
That's such a good example. So as we wrap up this deep dive into body language, what's the most important thing you want people to remember?
I think the main takeaway is that understanding body language, it's a skill anyone can learn. It's not just about memorizing a bunch of gestures, though. It's about paying attention, practicing, considering the whole context.
And it makes you a better communicator, right? More in tune with people.
Absolutely. So for anyone who wants to start applying this, where should they begin?
Yeah, what's a good first step?
Just pick one or two things to focus on, like facial expressions or posture. Start observing those in your everyday interactions. The more you do it, the more natural it'll become.
Small steps.
Yep.
And the payoff.
You start to see beyond the words, you know? You get those deeper insights into what people are really thinking and feeling. And that can transform your relationships, your work, everything.
Wow, that's powerful. So as you go about your day, think about all the ways you communicated without even saying a word. And maybe the messages you might have missed. What will you see differently now?
That's a great question to ponder.
Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive.